Uhuru. Uhuru, and welcome back to Black Power Blueprint Live, broadcasting every first and third Tuesday of the month here from our Black Power Blueprint Facebook page and on our Black Power Blueprint YouTube channel. My name is Jamie Simpson. I'm a member of the Black Power Blueprint Reparations Committee, and I am honored to be here tonight hosting an episode of Black Power Blueprint Live called Reclaiming Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this is a show that is broadcast on both Facebook and YouTube, and we invite you to like us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and like us on Facebook, and share this on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Share this live stream far and wide. Uhuru. We are having some minor technical difficulties tonight with the audio in particular, so please do bear with us. We have a very, very incredible guest. We're honored to welcome back to the studio tonight the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and leader of the African Socialist International, who has been working tirelessly for 50 years for the total liberation of Africa and African people everywhere under the leadership of the African working class, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru and welcome. Very, very honored to have you with us tonight, and we're also very honored to introduce my co-host and guest. She is the chair of the white organization of the African People's Socialist Party, extending the African Revolution into the white community, the African People's Solidarity Committee's chairwoman, Penny Hess. Uhuru. Uhuru. Such an honor to be with both of you tonight at the beautiful Uhuru House here on 18th Avenue South in St. Petersburg, Florida.
AKA Tyrone Lewis Boulevard.
Exactly. Tyrone Lewis Boulevard will be the name after the revolution, undoubtedly, and it is as far as this movement is concerned. And again, we want to ask everyone to please subscribe to our Black Power Blueprint YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, share us on Instagram and on Twitter, give us a thumbs up, and share this as far and wide as you can. So we're going to be getting to a very interesting discussion with Chairman Omali Yeshitela momentarily, and we have some victories to announce, some news, some developments in the campaigns being waged by this incredible organization. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru, and uhuru to everybody who's participating tonight. And thank you, Jamie. And again, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, it's such an honor to have you here and be able to talk to you tonight. As Jamie said, we have so much to talk about. There's so many different fronts and victories, and the party is growing, the party is winning. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. And I just want to start by saying a few things, that we often have our comrade Jesse Neville from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, with us. And also often Director Akile, who is the leader of the African People's Socialist Party's Department of Agitprop. And they are not with us tonight because they are just returning from a very successful tour in Seattle and Portland, out on the West Coast, where they just had huge crowds and built a branch of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement in each city, as well as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement getting larger in each city. So really want to salute them and know that that this movement is on the move everywhere. So as Jamie said, I am the chair of the white organization of the African People's Socialist Party that was founded in 1976 by the party to extend the African Revolution into white society, to be able to place white people strategically with the understanding that this system is built on the enslavement of African people and the assault on Africa, the genocide of indigenous peoples, and the colonization of the vast majority of people on the planet Earth for the benefit of white society, and that we sit on that pedestal, and therefore white people are not going to lead the revolution. African workers in the cornerstone of imperialism are going to lead the revolution as the colonized forces forcibly dispersed around the world inside the center of imperialism and on the continent of Africa. And so, you know, this is the leading force in the world. And if we want to be revolutionaries, if we want to be part of the future of humanity, we can join the African People's Solidarity Committee to work in the white community, to win other white people to join us, and to unleash the stolen resources and turn them over as reparations to the African Revolution. And, you know, I just wanted to say that this is a web event of the Black Power Blueprint. It's called Black Power Blueprint Live. As Jamie said, we're here every other week, and this is our second year in carrying these out. And this is a fundraiser tonight, as always, for the projects of the Black Power Blueprint based in St. Louis, Missouri, and led by Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, who I want to very much salute tonight, and just say briefly that in 2017, Deputy Chair went to St. Louis based on the mandates and the proposals and resolutions from the Congress, the 6th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party that the chairman laid out about building dual and contending power in the African working class communities. And Deputy Chair went to St. Louis, where there were many abandoned houses and city-owned properties, and began, you know, purchasing buildings. And this became a huge campaign, galvanizing the African working class community of St. Louis, the north side of St. Louis, that we saw uprising around in response and resistance to the police murder of Michael Brown in 2014, and that this has, you know, produced the Uhuru House at 4101 West Florissant, demolished the buildings next door to the Uhuru House across the street to make way for a 50-foot flagpole that flies a 25-foot African flag that is so beautiful and so loved in that community, and is also going to be the site of the One Africa, One Nation marketplace, and many other projects that we will be talking about tonight. But you can learn about it all by going to blackpowerblueprint.org. You can see all the videos that we put out. We have raised over $65,000 from, thanks to you, for this project over the last year, over the last 13 months. It's been very, very powerful, and the work has just gone incredibly fast. So tonight, we are beginning the new year with our goal of raising $20,000 in the first quarter for these projects, and that we have raised so far this year $1,900. We want to thank a few people who have given tonight already, including Ali Ayello, who's in Boston, who gave $15, Jackson Hollingsworth, who's here with us tonight, who gave $10, and Lisa Watson, who has put in $45 tonight. So we raised $70 towards a goal. We've raised 10% of what we want to raise tonight. So that is very exciting. We want to thank the forces and comrades who have put in tonight, and ask you again to go to blackpowerblueprint.org. And this is a place that you can, if you are a North American or white person, you can literally participate in reparations to the African community. And anybody can give, everybody can give as an investment, a stake in the future of the African working class and all humanity, the African Revolution.
Uhuru, Chairman Penny, thank you so much for that. I want to express my appreciation for the stance that you take of reparations that allows people like myself and so many people out there to take a similar stance, to have a material stake in African revolution and make a material contribution to African liberation, and that's reparations. I'm going to put in $20 tonight.
All right.
And I call on everyone out there to do as much as you can, to dig generously, to share this far and wide. Call one of your relatives, maybe text them, email them, however you get in touch with the people that you know that have the ability to materially support this incredibly urgent project this incredibly positive view of the world, the Black Power Blueprint, which you can do by going to blackpowerblueprint.org tonight and making your contribution. And if you're white, as Penny said, you can do that as reparations. And as Chair Jesse said in his candidacy for mayor, we say in this movement, unity through reparations. And that is not just lip service. It's happening every day.
That's
so
right.
We have some really extraordinary things to talk about tonight, but we'd like you to continue to keep that in your mind as we discuss these incredible changes and events going on throughout the world with Chairman Omali Yeshitela, to keep going to blackpowerblueprint.org and making your contribution towards this incredibly urgent work. And so, Uhuru, with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Chairwoman Penny Hess, for our interview with Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you so much for being on again tonight. I know you were just on a radio interview for 2 hours just shortly before this, and that was really powerful, the part I heard of that. And, you know, tonight we're talking about the legacy of Martin Luther King. And, you know, that this is just before, basically a few days before the holiday that this system and this government has set up for him to, you know, to memorialize him. So could you sum up the significance of Martin Luther King in history and within the history of the movement for African liberation?
Uhuru, I want to thank you and thank everybody that's there. If you don't mind, I'd like to just move a bit off script
Sure.
momentarily. Because I think that this is an extremely important webinar that we're doing. This is an extremely important process, and more so than many people may understand. People now engaged in political work of sorts by sitting in front of computers, and generally speaking often don't have a history, haven't been engaged in real struggle and connecting with people and organizing throughout communities and dealing with a lot of the complexities that we are confronted with, and not the least of which has been the relationship of white people and what has posited itself as a white left or movement in this country. And I think it's really important what we're doing and talking to the people who we're talking to. This whole issue of solidarity, which is it's relatively new, a kind of concept, the way we have embraced it and taken it on in the Uhuru movement. We are revolutionaries. We're not trying to build an organization based on charity and, you know, send your 50 cents a week to this or that. And we're a revolutionary organization. We're actually intent on overturning this relationship that Africans have with capital and with the United States government, all other imperialist powers. But we see this as central to changing the world and ending a world of oppressed and oppressors, of workers and bosses and things like that. And central to this question has always been central, even if it hasn't been addressed directly, is this relationship that African people, black people, have specifically right now in the United States, but it's international, to white people, to the government, etc. And a big problem that we have been confronted with historically is that the African people who've had to struggle, that we haven't had options not to struggle, and who've had to go up against the power of the United States government, white lynch mobs and things like that, have too long, most often had to do it by ourselves. And it meant that a movement was in isolation. And that we had, this is not to say we didn't have some friends or some liberals who didn't like us, or some people who, you know, people died, you know, white people died, you know, like in the civil rights movement, Viola Louisa is one of the examples, Schwerner and Gutman, you know, in Mississippi, other examples of that. But what I'm talking about is not just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 white people. I'm talking about in general. The general sentiment of the white population was such that U.S. government and everybody who wanted to terrorize us felt like they could do it because there was support in Africa in the white community, that there was no unity with the aspiration of black people to be free. That's why I think this is so important, what we're doing here, and what the African People's Socialist Party did in organizing the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Solidarity Movement at large. You mentioned that what has occurred is that the African Revolution has been extended into the white world, into the white community. What the party's done is deal with this whole question of isolation, that somehow Africans can be killed. I remember during the 60s where it was an assumption that the police was going to attack, etc., and then we, try to rally some white leftist people to come and sleep in the office or sleep in the front of the office so that the police would have to come through them, and generally speaking, they were not prepared to do that. Even Mississippi Summer, Freedom Summer 1964, was organized in a fashion assuming that white people would be there, and the attacks on the movement then, having to go through white people, would create conditions where we can revitalize the civil rights movement itself. And what the party did was to create the African People's Solidarity Committee and to extend our movement into the white community. And so, by virtue of becoming solidarity forces, white people could actually join the African Revolution. They could give that kind of solidarity, that kind of support to the African Revolution. And so doing, they're supporting a cause that would overturn this whole relationship of capitalism and the vicious dog-eat-dog kind of system that people find so oppressive and so horrible. And most people recognize instinctively that central to that is black people in this country and what happens to black people. And black people have always been on the front lines and will be on the front lines. And now what we've done is organize white people to take that on. And that's good. And that's not been something that white people, that our enemies have ever liked, have ever appreciated. And so there's been the white people become the nigger lovers on the one hand, and then there's other forms of slander that has come about because of this. And some of you who are veterans of the movement remember that slander at one time was that the Solidarity Movement was white lesbians working under the leadership of black men. There have been other things. There have even been a time when we were building for the reparations tribunal that happened. The first time in the history, we're building a reparations tribunal to put the United States government on trial for its crimes against African people, and to get a judgment from people we've organized that the United States government owes African people reparations. And I think at the time we came up with $4.1 trillion at least. And, there were even nationalists who said, well, we can't do that because white people are there and the white people are going to get all the money. Just various kinds of slander, various kinds of assault on moving this forward. This issue of the relationship of white people to the struggle, can there be a relationship of white people to struggle, plays upon some of the base fears and prejudices, etc., that exist in the world, and the legitimate suspicions of African people about a relationship to white people. And that's why I think this is so important. Because it's not just a discussion. It's a process by which white people who want to be on the right side of history can do that concretely. Concretely. That's what we say, material solidarity with the struggle for African self-determination. White people can do that. And you can calculate this solidarity in numbers. You can come up and say, as we've said here, that we're beginning a year with a goal to raise $20,000 by the end of March. I mean, you can calculate that. Now, what that means to some people is that the white people are getting $20,000. But what it really means is that the white people are giving $20,000 to this struggle. Yeah. And I think it gives us an opportunity to really attack this traditional relationship that has existed between Africans and white people in this country. And it's not, going to lunch with your black friend or, something to that effect, but it's actually organizing people to change the world. Because it's really interesting, because many of the people who have attacked us, as you know, Comrade Penny, in the past about the relationship we have with African People's Solidarity Committee or the Solidarity Movement, were themselves involved in secret relationships with white people, and which by virtue of the fact that they were secret and could not be talked about, which meant that they were not relationships based on principle. We've always said what we are, what we do, why this relationship exists. And so I just think it's really important. I just want to send that out. I think the Solidarity Movement, I want to salute you, and I want to call on everybody to join the Solidarity Movement, to join this movement of solidarity with the struggle of African people, that in this instance is acquiring a material, concrete manifestation through the support with the Black Power Blueprint Project that African people have organized. The African People's Socialist Party have organized, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. The office of the deputy chair of our party has organized in St. Louis, Missouri. And then it's not just an abstract question of solidarity. Like I said, you can count it, you can calculate it, and to coin a phrase, you can put that in the bank.
Uhuru, Chairman, I really appreciate that. And I do remember, you know, having had the honor of joining APSC from its very founding conference in 1976, I do remember all the years of just ridiculous, subjective, slanderous attacks on APSC, which continue today.
Yeah.
And serve a purpose.
An attack on the party through APSC,
yes.
And that's what it is. It's an attack on the party through APSC.
Thank you.
And that's what has been. So they don't come necessarily to attack us directly, or if they attack us directly, they use APSC as the basis for doing that.
Yeah.
But that's historic. Yeah.
I know, and it's nothing new. And it, you know, it really brings me to a question, and sort of we're talking about this question of Martin Luther King,
yes.
And when we talk about that, we're talking about the question of the counterinsurgency attack on the African liberation movement, on the Black Power movement of the 1960s, and the African liberation movement, and by extension, revolutionary movements all around the world by imperialism, and that Martin Luther King also was killed, you know, and by the U.S. government, and carried, you know, which had a program of the way that they were going to attack and work to bring down, try to bring down the Black Revolution of the 1960s. And I just think that, you know, when you look at the COINTELPRO, which was to destroy the ability of youth to come in, destroy the organizations, destroy the legitimacy of the leaders, all of the things that they work to do, it's all about destruction.
Yeah.
It's not about building anything.
Yeah.
And it's the African People's Socialist Party that has come out of the counterinsurgency in your leadership that could even sum up that there was a counterinsurgency, you know, and that has worked to build infrastructure of the African working class all around the world for 50 years, built all different fronts of institutions, of organization, of mass organizations, of campaigns that went beyond to, you know, to just protest into the building of a revolutionary movement. Chairman.
I mean, we've heard, you know, like the slander, like, well, how much money do the white people make in the Uhuru movement? Well, we're building a revolution. It's not an employment center. It's not about that. And for years, starting with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I had an income of when it would happen, of $15 a week. Mm-hmm. And for years, that was all of it. And then, but before there was an African People's Solidarity Committee, we built a restaurant in St. Petersburg, Ujamaa Restaurant. Mm-hmm. We organized, self-determination, self-reliance institutions. We were intent on doing that. And what the creation of the Solidarity Movement did was give us certain resources that we could use to deepen and the whole development of the self-reliance institutions that we were always committed to, you know, and that were always under attack, by the way. Ujamaa Restaurant in St. Petersburg, Florida, under attack. We built a bookstore and record shop in Louisville, Kentucky. We built a bookstore and record shop in Gainesville, Florida. We built, you know, various kinds of institutions connected to the whole question of self-reliance, because self-reliance is critical to undermining the power of capital. For Africans and other people to achieve self-reliance, it means that we have to extract ourselves from the parasitic grasp of imperialist white power, and that's what we've done. And I want to say that I think it's really important. I want to say that. I want to say to everybody who is watching this that you know, you too, you can't be intimidated or something about giving this solidarity, because they want to actually maintain this horrible split in the family of people, and that could continue to help the ongoing exploitation, expropriation of value from African people. And you're on the right side of history. That's all I'm saying. That it's been a bumpy road. I mean, I've gone to jail, I've been beaten, I've been, you know, all of these things, and other people have too, and sometimes worse than I. But it's not been something that has been handed to us, and everything that this party. And if you knew the story of concretely of the work that was done by the deputy chair, Onazine Yeshitela, who left St. Petersburg, Florida, in a relatively secure and warm bed to go into St. Louis and to face the St. Louis winter in a building that we purchased with no heat in the wintertime, and then no air in the summertime, dust everywhere, the floors missing, and etc. And she did that. She went in there by herself. She did that. She went by herself and participated with the forces that we had organized to take that work on, and that's who we are. We are the African People's Socialist Party. That's who we are. That's what we do. That's how we roll, so to speak. And so everybody should know that, you know, and feel firm and strong and recognizing that this is the best thing that you could possibly be doing, you know. And so back to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, no, Chairman, I really appreciate your words and this understanding. And, you know, just as a North American, as a white person, the question of reparations is giving back what was stolen to Africans. It's turning it back over. And like you're saying, there are all kinds of white people who have taken this word reparations and made it into a caricature around the question of charity. Like, you know, go to a bar and buy a drink for an African.
Or in the so-called movement, pick their own Negroes to whom they're going to be do solidarity with. You know, pick three, you know, this guy, I'm going to solidarity with this guy. And so this can give the impression of actually being united with the Black Revolution, when the Black Revolution has a history. It's almost 50 years long. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Facebook, you can see that, you can even watch this now, and you see the Black Revolution. Even when it was supposed to be dead, it was the African People's Socialist Party that continued to complete that revolution, and that's why we're the last person standing. That's why the party is here, and nothing else is here. You know, so, you know, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing.
The African People's Socialist Party built the infrastructure of revolution and upheld it for the entire world. Nobody else has done that.
And we built the African People's Solidarity Committee.
Yes.
Chairman, I really appreciate this conversation. For the benefit of the viewers, could we just be clear, when we're saying APSC, that is the acronym
African
for
People's Solidarity
Committee. Yes, African People's Solidarity Committee.
Counterinsurgency and COINTELPRO, for people who may not be familiar with those terms.
Counterinsurgency, and I'm glad you talked about both of them. COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, was something that was specifically the FBI did it, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the domestic secret political police in this country. But counterinsurgency simply is a sophisticated, sometimes not, process that was created by oppressors, by the imperialists, by the capitalists, to stop anything that they call an insurgency, where oppressed people are rising up. That's called an insurgency. So they develop a science, an art of crushing that. So they have counterinsurgency, keeping people from being free. And you hear that occasionally talked about in Afghanistan and perhaps in Iraq and stuff like that, but they have done that and continue to do that right now in this country. And it is a nasty tool, and they use virtually every form of warfare: psychological warfare, political warfare, economic warfare, and the final analysis, it falls on military. And that's how the military, and we're talking about Martin Luther King, we're talking about Malcolm X, we're talking about the Black Panther parties who were attacked, we're talking about the times when I've been attacked, shot at, arrested and
Yes.
stuff like that. That's counterinsurgency, and it covers all kinds of things and use all kinds of means by which to carry it out. I mean, you've even had CIA actually buy the rights and produce certain movies. You know, that they wanted to portray the world in a certain way, and so, you know, today they wouldn't use movies, they probably use, you know, like internet stuff, you know, etc. But it's the same kind of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, anything that carries out, you know, you can go on the internet and find the goals of COINTELPRO and what its objectives were. They're laid out there, and in many books. And again, you know, it was to destroy the movement, to kill anybody who tried to rise up, to lead the people, to lead the African Revolution. I mean, that was stated and clear. And they said about Martin Luther King that if he would ever abandon his allegiance to nonviolence, then, you know, he's a target.
Yeah, he was a target. And, you know, I mean, you talk about the counterinsurgency and this attempt, you know, like to attack this relationship that we have with APSC was also a determination that the party should not survive, the revolution should not survive, and we should not have access to the resources needed to survive. But we are here, you know, and like we have, you know, maybe 30, almost 30 or more, you know, like institutions. And I think that that's something that should be recognized. But it didn't, I mean, Susan Worth is dead. Susan Worth was a member of the Solidarity movement. She's dead. She's dead because the counterinsurgency had her kidnapped. And they were going to rescue her from a cult. And they were going to deprogram her. And they took her to this place where a black man, an African, was the head of this deprogramming process. And they beat her and they stripped her naked and did horrible things to her, so to the extent that when she was freed from them immediately, she committed suicide. Counterinsurgency was Comrade Ruby, who works in the furniture store right now in Ruby's in Philly, who participated in the tent city where we were getting housing for the homeless Africans in Oakland, California, who was attacked by the police. There are pictures of her on her belly while police's knee is in her back. These are the struggles and commitments that were made by people in this movement. This ain't nothing to play with, and our movement is nothing to play with, and it's committed and dedicated people that constitute the essence of our movement, and people who are here. This is what you're supporting. And I think, you know, people walk around with their Che Guevara shirts on and what have you, and you can't treat that like some passe. You can't treat it like something of the past. It's living today. The revolutionary movement is living today, and this Black Power blueprint gives everybody an opportunity to participate in it, and I've probably exhausted that, but I think it was important to say something about that.
I think that's really critical, because the party is about building, and the party is winning and building and growing every single day. I want to thank Jamie Simpson for putting in $20, Kitty Riley, $30, and Janice Kant, $50. So we have raised $170. We need $530 more to go. So from the African People's Solidarity Committee tonight, we're going to put in $50. So that means we're at $220 towards our goal. And we're about a third of the way there, and we're going to make it. We can do this because this is about reparations. This is not about charity. This is not about negative. This is not about slander or talking or reality show or anything like that. This is about revolution, and this is led by the African working class going up against imperialism single-handedly. That's what Chairman Omali Yeshitela did. Nobody else fought this. Everybody caved in to the goals of the counterinsurgency, which was even to destroy the ideas of the African Revolution, the consciousness of it, to demoralize the people. Chairman, you have summed up how this counterinsurgency went beyond even the murders and the slander and the destruction of the organization into the imposition of massive amounts of crack cocaine and chemical warfare into the African community. You were the one that summed that up. Could you talk about that?
I think that's important. You know, I mean, it's important for people to know the kind of movement they're involved in, because the counterinsurgency was real, it is real. And a weakness of our position has been that there have been more than 2 generations since the revolution was crushed, and the rebuilding of the revolutionary movement. I'm not talking about rebuilding as some kind of black thing. I'm talking about the revolutionary movement is something that the party has been committed to complete the black revolution, not to complete getting somebody black elected or something to that effect, but to complete the black revolution. That's what we've been involved in. And to get there, we had to define all of the contradictions that were assaulting our people. And not the least of them was this imposition of a drug economy on our community. So that the government, and we're seeing the consequences of that even today as it continues to grow, would make it impossible for African people to participate in the legal economy in this country, and then it would create an illegal economy based on drugs that the CIA brought into this country. I mean, there have been volumes written about it subsequent to the fact that we were having demonstrations for years, you know, saying that the White House is the rock house. That's what they call crack cocaine at the time. And crack cocaine was something, it wasn't even cocaine. It was a derivative of cocaine that somebody went into a laboratory and created specifically for the purpose of poisoning our people and corrupting and undermining the revolutionary project and the consciousness of the masses of our people. And we took that on. And when nobody was taking on, when nobody was talking about counterinsurgency, in fact, nobody's talking about counterinsurgency even since that time. They might talk police arrested some people. It was a counterinsurgency operation that continues up to this day, because the African population in this country is the Achilles heel of capitalism, of imperialism, and the social system itself. And that's why the system is so vicious in its assault on us. And if you look at the history, and this is what I think is also really important, you look at the history of our movement in this country, you will find that most of the revolutionary movements had a lifetime existence, effective existence of maybe 3 to 4 years. The Black Panther Party, 3 to 4 years in terms of its effective revolutionary life. Even the Garvey movement in this country only lasted just a few years. And so what that meant was often that the movement was denied an opportunity to develop experience, to know how to wage struggles effectively. But the party, the African People's Socialist Party, has been here for 46 years. And that meant that we have achieved the experience, and we have learned how to fight the struggle, and we've learned every lesson that was to be learned since the attack on the revolution, since the imposition of the drug economy on our communities. We've learned every lesson that had to be learned, that could be learned in that process, and that's why we're here today talking to you. This is a part of the lessons that we've learned that we're conveying at this point, not just in this discussion, but with this project, the Black Power Blueprint.
Uhuru, Chairman. And, you know, as a member, the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, under the leadership of the party, placed into the white community for 42 years, which has been an incredible life to be able to lead, watching and participating in revolution unfolding through the leadership of the African working class. I have never seen the party slander anybody or anything, ever, ever. It is not about that. It is about taking on principled and honest political struggle with anybody who has disagreements, or, you know, and calling for that debate. But, you know, nobody can debate with African internationalism, the point of view of the African working class. So they resort to just foul, filthy slander. But filthy slander is not going to defeat the African working class. This is the organization of Africans in the so-called townships of Azania, occupied Azania, which is a euphemism for 38% or 40% of the African population today, even after the so-called liberation of South Africa, in Southern Africa, is deeply impoverished, living with no water, no electricity, no clean water into their houses, no plumbing, just, you know, the worst conditions on their own land. But that's where the African People's Socialist Party is organizing, and all throughout the U.S. has fought for every African murdered by the police, every African seized into this prison population way before those issues were out there. The party would be there alone, fighting for that and building a anti-colonial consciousness and having, just the vision to see that white people could be one, that we could be one. We didn't even know if we could be one. To having unity with African internationalism and how white people can be on the side of the African Revolution because we do hate this system, and that we want to be part of the world that is being called for when African workers have power and over the means of production and can control the economy in their own interest. And it's going to be a beautiful world. That's what I want to live for. That's what we, can have life. It is life-giving. It is building. It is working. And the party has work ethic. If any white people want to say that they're under the leadership of this and that, look at what has been built. What is the work? What is the work? This party works every single day of the year. Every single year to win, because first of all, imperialism never stops. The African Revolution never stops, day and night. The sun never sets on the African Revolution because it is all over the world, and it is working. It is working. It is building. It is organizing. It is building organization everywhere on all the fronts, and that's what this represents. Because I don't care how much you say you hate imperialism, and some people don't even say that, but that you hate the system, you want something else. Well, it's not going to happen by talking about it. It's not going to happen by slandering something. It's not going to happen by having a video about it. It's going to happen by building revolution step by step and building it from the ground up. And that's what the party has done. When it was defeated with imperialism, thought they wiped out revolution. They destroyed the Soviet Union. They destroyed the Vietnamese Revolution, not militarily, but economically forced them, into compliance with capitalism. Just the same with Nicaragua. They're trying to destroy Cuba. They're trying to destroy Venezuela, but they don't know what to do with the African People's Socialist Party. And that's why we should support this.
And how do they do? But they attacked Cuba with slander.
Yeah,
they attacked Vietnam with slander. They attacked the revolution. And I'm reminded of Garvey. And Garvey was buying steamship lines.
Yeah.
There was a man whose name was Cyril Briggs. He was leader of something called the African Brotherhood that really became sort of like the mass organization of the Communist Party, USA. But the thing about Briggs is that Briggs looked white. So when Garvey had to buy ships, when they would refuse to sell the ships to Africans, he sent Briggs, and Briggs bought the ship. So Briggs was a fake white guy who was serving the Black Revolution. And then Garvey also, the movement, I understand there was in St. Louis, there was an African community there that Africans were only able to buy property in the community because white people were used to buy the property for them. When I say make the purchases. I mean, so there's nothing, fundamentally new about a strategic utilization of white people. You'd be crazy not to do it, not to have factored in to any kind of strategy that you have. And so, I mean, Cyril Briggs, ended up being an enemy of the Garvey movement, but he was a fake white guy. He was a black guy. He was a fake white guy for the purpose of the revolution. And then he became a real white guy to fight against the revolution. But the point that I'm making is that you can fabricate all kinds of stuff to be opposed to revolution, but we're going to make this revolution, and I think we are.
Making it. We've already built the foundation of it, and I just really want to salute you, Chairman, and call on everybody here to go ahead and raise the money that we're talking about tonight. Now we want to thank some people here.
We have some folks who have taken this
stand,
ahead, and we salute you. So we want to thank everyone who's out there watching. I believe the last time we spoke, Lisa Watson had already donated.
We have another. Lisa just gave $50 more. So I want to salute you.
Lisa. Fantastic. And then we have Allison Haney.
$50.
Uhuru, comrade.
Secretary General of the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party.
That's right, and let's not forget Casey Mackey,
Uhuru.
Uhuru Solidarity Movement,
Right.
$15. Comrade Pete Yorachuk, $20.
Uhuru.
Pete. And we have Johan Bedingfield at $5. Uhuru, comrade Johan.
So we've raised $360 and we only have $340 to go tonight. So we can
Actually,
do this.
with Ruby
Focus.
Gittleson's
Whoa.
$25,
Whoa.
we're at $385. We have $315 remaining.
$15. Wow, 315. We're over halfway there, and we can do this.
Yes.
And you know, it is such an honor to be able to have the African Revolution opened up, to extend the African Revolution into the white society. And you know, that was a strategy of the party, and it's very brilliant. It's very, very brilliant. But at the same time, it's deeply personal for white people, because we have always been tied to self-imposed isolation, as you say, Chairman, from everybody else on the planet. We have participated in carrying out voluntarily the colonial violence against African people in a greater extent, in so many ways, than the U.S. government did. We were the government. We were the state. And, you know, we lynched, we burned, we tortured Africans, and sided in so many ways, every possible way, with the government, with the system, against the struggle of African people, even when we said we were supporting it. Even when we said we were supporting it, because we have opportunism in our DNA, and it's also in the position where we sit on the pedestal, so anything that we see as a solution is the solution about ourselves. But this gives us the opportunity to, you know, to turn loose the whiteness, to be able to join the human family for the first time, and there are a lot of problems to solve, and that's why, you know, it's such an honor to be under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Many, many white people are committing suicide, addicted to drugs, you know, letting their kids die, whatever, you know, just in these deaths of despair, and this is the answer. This is the answer. Imperialism has to go. We have to have a world led by the African working class and oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. So go to blackpowerblueprint.org and give whatever you can tonight, and that's a stand of reparations, an investment in the future of all of humanity.
Including our own, as you said,
Yes.
Chairwoman Penny. I really appreciate you saying that. I really identify with that. That it is a personal question, reparations. It's a political stance, yes, but I know when I came into this movement, you know, at the age of 22, I did not understand myself. I did not understand why I had all of these conflicting opinions, and you know, I hated my own culture, my own people, but I could not express why. You know, I knew it had something to do with racism, you know, but that was not sufficient. And it wasn't until coming to the headquarters of the African People's Socialist Party and hearing you, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, sum up this whole question of white people and white power in a very scientific and concrete way. There was no mysticism about it. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And everyone watching, I think it was 1999. It was a
You were here 20 years. Some people don't last 5 years. 2 or 3 years.
I learned that pretty quickly in this movement. And you know, I remember early on there was a piece that had been written in the 70s, Chairman, called "Smash Slam the Bill, Principled Unity." And that was such an incredible piece.
Yes, it was. That still is.
I could see at the time, and I can see now, force is still operating in the same slimy way, and that incredible high ground that the party took at that time was the same high ground it had at that point, same high ground it occupies
I saw you
today.
take a great stance, Jamie. You may not remember. This was somebody who had once been in the Solidarity movement. I was so proud of that. Yeah, I mean, and they, you know, they tried to slam the Solidarity movement on me or the party or something like that, and they thought you were a weak link for some reason or another. I think they might have been friends. They might have been friendly with you or something to that effect. And I was really proud of the
Stood
stance
up.
that you took. You took a great principled down stance, and that was really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, really powerful.
That means a lot, Chairman.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was powerful. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
The personal is political.
Yeah,
And you know,
exactly.
when you have
Exactly.
someone that you think is your friend who starts to slander
Yeah,
the
yeah,
people that
yeah,
mean the most to you in your
yeah,
life, that have helped you
yeah.
understand yourself, your place in the world, and
Yeah.
a future.
Yeah.
That there actually is a future that you can be part of.
Yeah.
How can you be friends with someone like that?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes no sense. It makes so
Right.
if you feel the same way, you're out there.
Yeah.
Of course, we're asking everyone to continue going to blackpowerblueprint.org, make your donation, make your contribution, make your statement of material solidarity with African liberation. We're
Oh
here
wow,
talking to Chairman.
Jeanette Cruz. We met you in Seattle.
Yes.
$100.
All right, Jeanette. That's what we're talking about.
James White. $25.
Uhuru.
James is out in Washington D.C., right? I think so. So we've raised $510. We
Yeah.
only have 190 to go. So go to
Right.
Black Power
Yeah,
Blueprint.
yeah.
Wow, this is very powerful. Really, really salute all of you who have participated tonight. We're making our goal. Now, Chairman, we have to talk about a few victories here
Yeah.
tonight because there's so many victories.
Okay.
That's the exciting thing about
Okay.
this movement. There's so many victories.
Let's do that.
All right. So the first victory I wanted to discuss is the struggle around the Martin Luther King Day
Yes.
that's gone on here
Yes.
in St. Petersburg. Could you sum up that? What happened? And
Yeah, it's a really important victory of sorts. You know, the U.S. government murdered Martin Luther King and gave Africans a holiday. You know, King was an extraordinary figure and force. I mean, we had serious political differences with Martin Luther King and ideological differences, but King could mobilize masses, millions of African people, and that was something very powerful. And plus, he was progressive. You know, like you see people who following what's supposed to be his footsteps and what have you, and they're out on the make for themselves. But King was never a wealthy person, and he built organization movement for the people, and he was dangerous. He was the one who organized the Poor People's Campaign. And when he organized the Poor People's Campaign, people suggested two things that killed King. One presentation he made at Riverside Church on April 4th, 1967, where he publicly questioned his ability to remain loyal to principles of nonviolence. You know, when, as he put it, people are coming up to saying, Dr. King, how can you ask us to be nonviolent, as violent as America is in Vietnam? And where he publicly questioned his ability to do that. And then the other thing, and by the way, that was April 4th, 1967. He was assassinated on the same day a year later, and that was no coincidence.
Yes.
That they killed him April 4th, 1968. The U.S. government did that. And the other thing about King that people suggest contributed to the government killing him was the Poor People's Campaign. Because you may have heard Malcolm X speaking about that on occasion, where he said that the difference in the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution, he talked about how the Poor People's Campaign, that they were talking about going to Washington, D.C. and laying down on the airport and refusing to let the airplanes land and to do everything to disrupt the status quo. And King had the authority, the ability to call out Africans who could have done that. So that made him a very dangerous person to the United States government. And also the fact that the movement was going beyond King. What I say, I mean, is that people talking about Black Power, and then the Black Panther Party had come into existence, the Jomo, the Hunter Militant Organization, all these organizations, they were going beyond King. And for King to maintain his legitimacy and authority in the African community, he was going to have to get out in front of that movement too. So he was clearly a serious threat to them, and they murdered him. They executed him in a very horrible way. And you know, that was part of the significance of Martin Luther King. And he mobilized African people. He believed, you know, philosophical nonviolence. That was what he preached. I think King had concluded that there was no way that Africans could win this struggle, that otherwise we'd be wiped out, and that kind of thing was what helped to influence, because he did say that America was the greatest purveyor of violence on earth. So he had no illusions about the ability of the government to kill him. But also King, anybody who watched King during this last period could see that in retrospect, King seemed to have known he was dead. He was threatened on a regular basis. The day before, if I'm not mistaken, he was assassinated. He made this speech and he talked about, I might not be there, get there with you, but you know, etc. And anybody looking at King then could see, get a sense that King knew that something was about to happen to him. And that's another thing I appreciated and loved about King, is because he didn't allow fear of the consequences of standing up to stop him from standing up. And there was something, what was it, the question that you raised about King?
Well, the struggle that the movement just won.
And so what happened here in the city of St. Petersburg is that over the years, there has developed the largest Martin Luther King celebration in this country. Mm-hmm. And we often had disagreements with the people who were leading that, and would often participate historically. It's about 30 years or so. This Martin Luther King celebration has grown tremendously. Thousands and thousands of people come out, you know, annually. But St. Petersburg has been undergoing a massive, rapid gentrification, for lack of a better term. The African community being pushed out. Huge sky-rises and new buildings going up every day in the white community, and in dividing line Central Avenue, more vending. You see vendors all up and down the street, white people. It's becoming a city. They're trying to turn to a Palm Beach where just for rich white people. And the Africans are losing our place here. And so part of what happened is last year, the local government actually sent in a massive show of armed force, police force, and shut down vendors so the Africans couldn't vend, and block the traffic and change the traffic patterns and put up barricades and everything to destroy the ability of African people to celebrate Martin Luther King holiday. And you know, there were some, you know, liberals, black liberals, I don't know if there's a thing that you can characterize as militant liberals, but some of them were militantly liberal, and who were talking about trying to get amnesty for the vendors and things like that, because the vendors and merchants in the African community were making half their income on that day. And so to destroy the ability for Africans to have income is just further determining that black people are not going to live in the city of St. Petersburg. And so the party took it on, and we began organizing and organizing the Africans in the community. We have access to a radio station that's owned by African People's Development and Empowerment Project, APEDF. I'm sorry, I didn't say that? Okay, APEDF, African People's Education Defense Fund, right? Black Power 96, and it was covering this story so seriously, and had African people from the community commenting on it. We were in the streets, we were putting up posters and calling for 10,000 guerrilla shock troops to come out and defend the community on this day. We had initiated a campaign where we were sending, in the process of sending letters to all of the bands who come and participate in this parade, and the schools to tell them that they need to rethink this, because we're going to be fighting this stuff. We had let everybody know that they were going to have to fight to do this, that we were not just going to lay down. And so on Friday, this past Friday, we got word from the city that they were going to back off, and that they were going to retreat from this position, that Africans could vend any place they wanted to on Martin Luther King Street. They didn't have to have licenses, as long as they had permission to be on whose ever property that they were doing that on. And that was a major victory, because they had said, when people protested how they had treated MLK Day celebration last year, they said, the chief of police, who was a Negro, African, who said that, said the only apology I want to make is because I didn't tell you that we were going to do it. And so they planned to do it again this time, but we were able to push them back. The people were able to push them back. We even had people working in the white community going door to door and at major tourist attractions, passing out flyers and asking white people to take a stance in solidarity with Black Power And they did. Many white people did, and so it made the difference. And so now, Martin Luther King Day celebration is going to happen right here in St. Petersburg on Martin Luther King Street, and Africans are going to be able to vent on that street. And Black Power 96 is doing a Freedom Mic program. So its programmers are going to be having performances and what have you on Martin Luther King at an institution that's owned by the African People Education and Defense Fund on Martin Luther King Street. So it was a great victory. The people want a great victory here.
I just want to say, woo! That's the power of the African working class organized in its own organization, and that is the African People's Socialist Party Uhuru. And I just really want to salute that struggle, and I do want to join in saluting Black Power 96.3 because, wow, just the pulse of the community, the statements that they recorded from Temba, who's the station manager, was out there on the streets recording people everywhere he would go from the African community who listened to think that Black Power 96 is the best station in Florida. People said, that all kinds of African music are played there, and just see it as the voice of themselves. And so many people, nobody was supporting what the city was doing. Everybody was outraged that there couldn't be this festival that belongs to the African community. I mean, people said this is African. That the Martin Luther King belongs to African people. It needs to be in the African community. And we were out there. I was with USM, Uhuru Solidarity Movement, on New Year's Eve for that first night thing. And we were out with a table, and all these white people were out, and tons of vendors. One cop we saw, not in a car, just strolling along, not armed, anything like that. And and tons of white people holding drinks and open containers of liquor, and nothing happened to them. There was no martial law, there was no police occupation of that. And so, and the African community is not even allowed to have what should be the biggest festival in the country. And I just want to say, Chairman, I really believe that the reason that St. Pete has the largest MLK Day parade of any place in the country, and I have been out there in Oakland and other places and seen it, it's nothing compared to what it is here. And I feel that this is because of you, because of the leadership, and that fact that you tore down that hideous mural that was in City Hall in 1966, that you have led the Black Power movement from here in St. Petersburg, spanning the entire globe for 50 years and more, and because the consciousness, just elevating the consciousness of the African community here, so that the 1996 rebellions,
But it's interesting you should mention that, because I was out free from prison on an appeal bond. I had been in prison for tearing the mural down. I was free from prison on an appeal bond. And young Africans in Gainesville, Florida wanted me to come to Gainesville, Florida to do a rally, because some of them had been arrested because they had become Black Power advocates as a consequence of the work that we were doing in St. Petersburg. And I went to Gainesville, Florida to participate in the demonstration. I was out of prison for 4 days. Then I caught a Greyhound bus, went to Gainesville, Florida, and then when I got off the bus in Gainesville, Florida, I learned that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. That's when I learned that he had been assassinated. And so 2 days later, at the demonstration that we were supposed to have, which the character, of course, was changed with the assassination of King, that I was arrested for the first person arrested on Florida law called inciting to riot, where there didn't have to be a riot. All I had to do was want a riot to happen. So it was like a thought crime. And they arrested me. And if you remember, King was killed during the Memphis sanitation workers strike. And so they arrested me, and they held me locked up for a month in the Gainesville jail before I was able to bond out. When I bonded out of jail in Gainesville, then I was out for 6 hours, and then I was rearrested because the bail bondsman, the state attorney had gone to the bail bondsman and had them come off my bond because the sanitation workers in St. Petersburg, Florida went on strike. And they didn't want me in St. Petersburg when the strike happened. So they arrested me again. And I'm saying this is all tied up with the Martin Luther King thing and the whole counterinsurgency to keep revolution from happening and all the things that our enemies would do to prevent a revolutionary organization, a party, to be able to continue to make this struggle. And so, you know, it took me another half month before I was able to get out of Gainesville, and I had to escape Gainesville on the floor of the back of a car, and to come to St. Petersburg, and where the sanitation workers were still demonstrating what have you. And that's when JOMO, the organization that I led, was created in the middle of actually supporting and working with the sanitation workers and turned into this powerful thing. So I agree that the whole history, there's been an unbroken history that this party that we have led, the party, the Uhuru movement, SNCC, and what have you led, has never been ended. And that, I agree, is probably why, you know, we do have this thing in St. Petersburg, Florida, that has.
And it's incredible, and it has to be that. It's not a coincidence, you know. And even that the whole Martin Luther King Day parade, even though the white city and the white establishment tried to hijack it over to the north side, it nevertheless is full of incredible African culture and bands and, you know, all kinds of things from all over.
Well, the whites try to do that, but there are Africans too who see their future with white people and integrating into the white thing. They would take this parade. We fought even the guy who was the original organizer, because and we struggled with it. I mean, literally inside the parades and what have you. We occupied much of that space for years, and then he took it to the white community, and then others of them took it to the white community, because that's where they see their validation. It's white people liking it, white people being a part of it, etc. And that's been an ongoing struggle we're involved in. And of course, what has happened over the years, this thing that they do on the city government has created this organization that's supposed to be dealing with the Martin Luther King Day, that was going to take Martin Luther King Day from Martin Luther King Street and take it to this thing that they call Tropicana Field, which a dome, which is another whole story. And then and the effort was sponsored by Walmart, which closed down the supermarket in the black community where black people might be able to vend. And so as opposed to black people being able to vend in our own community, here's Walmart. There are other kinds of corporations like that, and the city government with their own Martin Luther King Day thing that was going to happen at this Tropicana Field, this baseball dome that was built on an African community, you know, in the name of creating economic development, and the African can't even sell peanuts in that place. So this is the you know, the kind of struggle that we're involved in that led to where we are now with the Martin Luther King Day event happening here in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's going to be on January, what is that? 21st. Next Monday, drop the mic. Or rather, free the mic, in front of the
gym,
the Tyrone Lewis Community Gym,
which is it 1327 Martin Luther King South?
Something like that,
Yeah, the Tyrone Lewis Community Gym, and there's going to be a lot of vendors out there, and a big stage with, as you're saying, lots of culture. Before we go on, I just really want to thank some more contributions and stands of reparations here. We have Kristen Fortin, who really want to salute out there in Spokane, Washington. Gave $25, gives almost every time. Really salute you. And to the formidable Comrade Mads Ambrose, $100.
All right, Mads.
I know there was just Mads coordinated a very powerful event just last night there in Portland that helped build the Uhuru Solidarity Movement even bigger, and I believe that an Impedum branch was built there as well.
Wow.
So really salute you, Mads Ambrose, and Comrade Rose Latoul, $15 out in Oakland, who's also the USM organizer out there in Oakland, California. So we have raised $650. We only need $50 more to go to meet our goal tonight, and we're going to do this. We just need somebody to put in that 50 or two people to put in 25, and we can go there. We've got to talk about another victory, another really powerful thing that has happened, and this is where we can announce that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has been asked by the Oxford Union to speak at Oxford University on January 24th, the first African revolutionary to speak there since Malcolm X in 1964. You can see that on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and put in, search for Malcolm X at Oxford Union, and you can see the brilliant presentation that he gave there. Chairman Omali Yeshitela is going to be there. And I just want to read the letter, the email that was sent to the chairman from the Oxford Union. And it said, "Dear Mr. Yeshitela, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to extend an invitation to speak at the Oxford Union in our forthcoming term. Founded in 1823, we won't say after British colonialism, the Oxford Union is the largest society at the University of Oxford and one of the most famous student societies in the world. In the past, we have hosted visits ranging from U.S. Presidents Reagan, Nixon, and Carter to Morgan Freeman and Malcolm X. Moreover, we are famous for debating the most important and pressing issues of the day. From a liberty and security debate last year to King and Country debate of 1933. We would love for you to be part of this tradition and to speak on the motion, which actually there's a new motion now about the unification of Africa, and that's going to be very interesting. And they say to the chairman, with a lifetime of fighting for freedom for African people, you are a globally inspiring champion for racial equality and socialism. Your vision has been crucial to shaping the theory of African internationalism and indeed the socialist movement worldwide. This timely debate would be hugely benefited by your irreplaceable perspective and input." So then it goes on to talk about, the debate and what would be happening. It's going to be the 24th of January next week.
Yeah.
And the chairman is going to be going there, and it's really powerful, and it's a beautiful recognition of your significance in the world, Chairman. And it's really powerful to see. And as I heard Chicharwa from the African People's Socialist Party in St. Louis say, well, the white ruling class is finally catching up with the African working class. And your leadership. And I really, really appreciate that. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to say.
Just that this is a part of the whole thing of the battle of ideas, the war of ideas between the oppressed and the oppressors. And it says something about the integrity of the movement, that this is what they want to talk about. They want to talk about, they recognize that the struggle of African internationalism, the implication it has for the worldwide struggle for socialism and what have you. And it's really important because we've reached a new point in history, an era in history, where we said that the bourgeoisie has no answers now. And so it reaches out and it wants to have a debate. I mean, one person is a former prime minister, I've forgotten what country. There's a former Negro ambassador of the United States who will be a part of this debate. There is someone who was in the government of
Guinea?
No.
Prime Minister of
Uganda, Museveni, and these are some of the forces that we'll be talking to, and this whole thing about the war of ideas, to have an opportunity to extend this battle right into the camp, the thinking representatives of white power, the whole imperialist ruling class. It's a really important thing for what it will mean in terms of achieving a certain status for in intellectual circles, because the bourgeoisie don't control they influence the intellectual circle tremendously, and so this gives us a splendid opportunity.
Uhuru. Uhuru. And just to say that this debate, it's going to be a debate format, and the debate is the House, the position of the House or the Oxford Union is that the House would embrace an ever closer African Union. So the chairman is going to be, you know, on the side of the position of the House, the ever closer African Union, which of course the chairman will, you know, will completely put the complete African internationalist point of view. But I do just want to say that they list the 3 speakers for the proposition and 3 speakers in opposition to the proposition against African unity, but yet all of them, everybody else will be a neo-colonial force, pretty much clear that the chairman will be speaking alone in that kind of way. But it's going to be really, really powerful. And just to say, they describe the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, founder of the Uhuru movement, an African internationalist organization which claims the only way for Africans to achieve liberation is to struggle for an all-African socialist government. And that's really powerful, that that's there at the Oxford Union. So
That's our chairman.
Uhuru. And we want to thank Nana Yaw Grant from the African People's Socialist Party, $25. Uhuru.
We're just $25 away.
Short. We've raised
right?
$675, so we just need $25. Somebody can easily go put that in and get us to $700 tonight. And this has been really, really powerful. Chairman, there's so much more to talk to you about, but we have to go, and we will talk more because it's such an honor to have you on the show, and we hope that you will be coming back soon. So we want to thank you, and pardon? All right.
All right.
Deputy Chair Onisene Yeshitela, $25. One of our biggest recurring donors, so Chairman and Deputy Chair Onisene Yeshitela. So thank you and salute. So we reached our goal.
Uhuru, $700.
Right.
Thank you to everyone out there who donated. Thank you to everyone who was part of this webinar tonight.
Well, let's show them quick the T-shirts.
Yes, yes.
If you give $500, you get this beautiful T-shirt. This beautiful T-shirt, because our comrade Renee is going to send them out as the thank yous. And if you give $1,000, which several people have.
If it's cold like it is tonight, even in Florida.
Yep.
This beautiful
fantastic hoodie, this beautiful hoodie for the Black Power Blueprint. So go ahead and put your resources in, and we do keep track. So if you give over time, you still get one of these, and we're keeping track of all that. So we appreciate all of our repeat donors and all those who have taken a stand for the future of all humanity, which is political and economic power in the hands of the African working class.
It is
destruction of U.S. imperialism and parasitic capitalism once and for all.
Uhuru. So please keep contributing, though. If you haven't had a chance yet to go to blackpowerblueprint.org and make your contribution. We of course want to deeply express our profound appreciation for the co-founder and chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, the leader of the African Socialist International, and even as the white power petty bourgeoisie itself is acknowledging now, the leader of socialism and revolution in the world today, Chairman Omali Yeshitela here at Black Power Blueprint Live. So we have some announcements, and I just want to remind everyone that you can join this incredible work of the Black Power Blueprint. Just send us an email at join@blackpowerblueprint.org. Again, that's join@blackpowerblueprint.org.
And could I just say on that, because in St. Louis, Deputy Chair Onisene Yeshitela leads the Black Power Blueprint Committee, which is has at least 20 people in that committee. And it's very, very exciting, including people from all over the U.S. And of course, it's led by the African working class, but white people, North Americans, can also join this and be part of the Black Power Blueprint reparations campaign as well.
Exactly.
So that's join@blackpowerblueprint.org.
And
we'll send you to the right place.
Did we have one last?
Oh, Raya Fogarty.
Put us over. Comrade Raya.
$10 and Deputy Chair, $25.
Yes, we
think the families
can.
are going
Yes,
tonight.
we can.
Really appreciate the tremendous support tonight.
Unity through reparations. So, is it time to read the announcements?
Time. It is time.
All right. So, this coming Thursday, that's January 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is hosting a St. Petersburg event titled Victory for the Black Working Class. The real Martin Luther King celebration is back on MLK Street. And this is a solidarity mobilization around the recent victory, and the way forward will take place at the St. Petersburg Uhuru House right here, 1245 18th Avenue South. Please RSVP at handsoffmlkday2019.eventbrite.com. That's handsoffmlkday2019.eventbrite.com, or email stpete@uhurusolidarity.org for more info. And Uhuru is UHURU. And then January 21st is the Black Power 96.3 FM radio program. The MLK Day event is called Freedom Mike 727, featuring local performers, food vendors, and it will take place in front of the Tyrone Lewis Gym at 1327 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Street South in St. Petersburg. You can go to facebook.com/blackpower96fm for more info. And later on, March 23rd and 24th, the African National Women's Organization, an incredibly powerful organization, will be hosting its national plenary or planning conference at the St. Louis Uhuru House, located at 4101 West Florissant. And you can go to anwouhuru.org, that's ANWO for the registration information. April 6th and 7th, the Black is Back Coalition for Peace, Social Justice, and Reparations is holding its third electoral school at the St. Petersburg Uhuru House, again right here, 1245 18th Avenue South in St. Petersburg, Florida. You can go to blackisbackcoalition.org for registration information. And April 13th and 14th, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee, is holding its national convention in the St. Louis Uhuru House. You can find the registration information at uhurusolidarity.org. And is there anything else that you would like to?
There's an African Liberation Day mobilization that's happening in Washington, D.C. under the theme Africa for Africans. And let's see, that's it may be May 25th, 26th, or 26th, but you can go to apspuhuru.org and get information on that.
Also, we're going to be having One Africa, One Nation Marketplace in Portland on April 6th.
April 6th,
One
One Africa, One Nation Marketplace in Portland,
Wow.
Oregon,
Right
on
on.
April 6th.
Right on.
That's going to be a busy and incredible day.
Powerful, wow,
Yeah.
that's really exciting.
Yes. So again, that's May 25th or 26th, the African Liberation Day, incredibly significant day in the history of this party. And that's going to be May 25th or 26th, or both. You can go to
It's going to be a two-day event, so it starts on one of those days.
So look for those dates, May 25th and 26th at apspuhuru.org. And on April 6th, there will be a One Africa, One Nation event in Portland, Oregon. Marketplace, thank you.
Yeah, an outdoor market, just like the one in Philadelphia that's been there for over 10 years. It's so powerful.
It really is. The number of institutions on the ground that this organization
At least
has
30
created.
institutions, some of which are 30 and 40 years old.
And building still
Nobody
all the
has
time.
that.
Yes.
Nobody has that.
No. You cannot compare any organization to the African People's Socialist Party.
No, you can't.
And
Incomparable.
is there a website for the folks out there if they want to join in the marketplace?
Not yet.
Okay, so we'll keep
But
you updated on that.
You can do the join at blackpowerblueprint.org, and still you can go to blackpowerblueprint.org to see all the videos, all the pictures, the whole development of this project. It's really, really powerful. It's a beautiful history there. And let me just say that next week at this time slot, Uhuru Solidarity Movement will be holding a web event 8 p.m. Eastern here. Well, actually, it will be at Uhuru Solidarity Movement Facebook, as well as U.S. Uhuru Solidarity Movement on YouTube, channel on YouTube. And the subject of that is going to be the question of this wall that Trump is talking about, the border wall, the whole question of the border, the struggle of the indigenous people on both sides of the border. It's going to be really powerful, so we're looking forward to that discussion. Next week, join us at 8 o'clock Eastern. Go to Uhuru Solidarity Movement on Facebook page, or Uhuru Solidarity Movement YouTube channel.
Right. So that's a Uhuru Solidarity Movement's channel on YouTube. Please join that as well as the Black Power Blueprint YouTube channel. And thank you for watching this tonight. Thank you to everyone who contributed. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we
really want to salute all the comrades who made this possible tonight. Comrade Kyle Lees.
Yes, welcome back,
Jackson
Kyle.
Hollingsworth, Renee Nassar, and Amanda Carlozzi, and Mara Ratu, and so many others that participate in this campaign and make it happen every week.
Yes, and our incredible studio audience, and it looks like people are still contributing, so
Maureen
thank
Wagner,
you for the fantastic,
wow, $760 we've raised. We just need 4 more to get to 800, so keep that in mind and go to blackpowerblueprint.org.
That's right.
Thank you again, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Let's salute him.
Such an honor to have you on tonight. And I want to thank you, Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee.
And thank you, Jamie Simpson, for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, for being such a great MC and host.
Yes.
It's an honor and a privilege. Please get involved with this work if you aren't already. And I want to close it out by saying once again, we're going to continue to build unity through reparations. Uhuru.